what's interesting is that kanji, nen, and specifically kokoro's another one of these amazing words that it takes. I mean, it just seems that you sort of have to live in Japan and live with the word for a while before you understand all its elements, because first you think, oh, it just means heart, but it seems to combine heart, mind, and spirit almost as one entity, which is kind of hard to wrap your head around when you're new to the culture. So would you like to touch on kokoro and what it means, or how you understand it, and why you've moved from mindfulness to heartfulness? Because I'm sure kokoro plays a part in that.
Yeah. So this might be a way of connecting with Ikigai as well, which is a story about my grandmother that's in the book too. But it's when my grandmother was 99, she was living in Japan, and my mother had gone back and forth from the United States to Japan for almost 20 years and had reached a point in her life, she was 80, at which she felt it was no longer physically possible to do that. And so she said to my grandmother, would you like to come to live with us in the US? And that seemed very appealing because my mother is an only child, and she has two daughters who both live in that same area with her, or with one lives with her. And so there was this very beautiful image of my grandmother would spend her last days among those who she loved the most and who loved her the most. So she said, okay, why don't I come and see what it's like? And her option was that she would enter an old age home in Japan because she couldn't live alone anymore. So she comes to the US and she's there a couple months living with my mother and my older sister. And the visa is starting to run out. So it comes to a point where she's got to decide, what is she going to do? Is she going to stay there, or is she going to come back to Japan? So my sister calls me and says, can you translate for me? Because my sister doesn't speak Japanese. And so she says, so I said, sure. She got on the phone, and I said, Oba-chan, do shitai desu ka? And 日本に帰るか、アメリカに残るか、今決めないといけないと。And so and my grandmother says, そうね、やっぱりあなたのママのために日本に帰った方がいい。So I think it's better for your mother if I go back to Japan. I said, oh, okay. And she gives the phone to my sister. My sister said, what'd she say? And I said, well, she thinks it's better for mom if she goes back to Japan. I said, okay, I'll take care of mom. Now you just ask her again, what do you want to do, Grandma? So I say, yeah, ママは大丈夫なんですけれども、おばあちゃんはどうしたいんですか？自分はアメリカに残るんだったら、それも大丈夫です。And she says, いや、やっぱりあなたのお姉ちゃんのために日本に帰った方がいいよ。So I said,
I see
okay.
where this is going. Okay.
Yeah. So I said, I says, well, she thinks it's better for you if she goes back to Japan. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, what does she want to do? I say, okay, I'll ask her again. And I said, いや、おばあちゃん別に、お姉ちゃんはね、ずっと一緒に住みたいですよ。And あなたはどうしたいんですか？それがお姉ちゃんが知りたい。そうね、やっぱり、孫たちのために日本に帰った方がいい。So I get back. She thinks it's better for all the grandchildren if she goes back to Japan. And just says, are you translating right for me? No. I said, well, I'm doing my best with my bad Japanese, but she seems to understand, and she seems to be saying that she doesn't understand your question, the way you're asking it. You think that she can somehow decide as this individual person what she wants to do. But her whole idea of what she wants to do is based on what is best for everyone. Right? And she can't think that, I'd be happier if I stayed here. But she's thinking there's, and this goes back to what is Ikigai, right? This Ikigai is for, some people is not this individual sense of I'll be happier if I have these desirable settings surrounded by my loved ones, but I will find my ikigai if I sacrifice, if I go back to Japan, if I do what is I think is best for everyone. If I
Mm.
don't mendo o kakenai, if I don't cause trouble
Trouble.
for other
Mm.
people, that will make me feel like I am truly living my life the best way I can. And that's what I want. And so she went back to Japan and she lived for 10 years in an old age home. And it wasn't a happy life in many ways, but I always felt that her decision was made with this very beautiful sense of I'm finding my way in life by doing what I think is best for everyone that I love. And this is the way I find my way in life. And you might not understand it from, what she saw as an American, nephew or grandchild. And it may be hard to understand, but this is what I choose.
Mm.
And I that remains with me with in terms of trying to understand what does it mean, like to find meaning, purpose? What does ikigai mean? And I think it's hard to understand what it means for different people. And it depends so much on the way that they grow up. And she grew up with this belief that this is the way you find your way in life.
It's beautiful. I guess we might describe it as, selfless. And there's actually a quote in your book that I think relates to this. So I might just read it. Mindfulness is still becoming equated with the individual pursuit of happiness, with people seeking pleasure and more joy, with less stress and less involvement. Yet the popular culture's adoption of mindfulness alone risks losing its original meaning. Heartfulness emphasizes purpose through connecting to something larger than the individual self. A heartful life finds meaning in making a difference in the lives of others. And I'm sure that's what your grandmother's intention was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is really interesting. Western or popular culture's adoption of Japanese cultural, not just Japanese, but other cultural, spiritual concepts usually becomes very self-centric, as you mentioned, and kind of the original meaning gets lost. This has happened with the Ikigai concept, with everyone relating it to the sweet spot of a Venn diagram and mindfulness. So why does this, I guess, yeah, why does this happen? Why do things get lost in translation? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess I think it's just, that we're just all victims of our own experiences and lack of experiences. And it's just that we are so socialized by our environments and the ideologies of our environments. And there's that. So I think for some people who are brought up in a culture like the mainstream American culture, for example, it's very hard to understand the extent to which people are socialized in a culture like Japan. And that, I was thinking of the kanji again for self, the jibun, right? The sense that the first part is the kind of the ego self, but the second part is bun, showing that it's part of something greater. And so that whole sense of self is just something that you learn so early in life, and that you learn it through your parents or your schools, the teachers, the religious rituals you go through. And it just becomes part of the way that your worldview. And that's it's so hard for us to really uh, see the world through another's eyes, and that
Mm.
follows us through our. And that's why I think it's so important, experiences like being more mindful, that it can at least offers the possibility of seeing the world in a different way. And I think a lot of people, though, turn back once they get to a point in which they're seeing something new, and it becomes fearful, and then they see glimpses of reality and they think they're enlightened. And so a lot of the people around here in Silicon Valley they do some vipassana retreats, or they take some kind of psychedelic drugs, and they see glimpses of a greater reality of connection, but then they come back to earth and they come back to their same reality again. And it's very difficult for people then to see those glimpses of a greater reality and then to actually live that lifestyle, because then that requires a lot of practice, right? You've got to practice daily and to keep reminding of yourself that this is a whole different way of living and a way of seeing the world. And so I practice every day. It isn't something that you learn one day and you wake up the next day and you know it. You have to be reminded constantly, practice and that's why, the importance of something like in Japanese culture, the butsudan or the kamidana or something that reminds you every morning of you are here because of your ancestors. And
Yeah.
you are here. You owe so much gratitude to your ancestors. And if you can connect to that, you will have a great source of energy. That's the source again, right? You're connected to something that will help you to live in a better way.
The concept of self is really interesting. And in the West, there is this idea we sort of pride ourselves on being independent, self-reliant, and that, we kind of do it all ourselves. And we're always talking about this best version of ourselves. And then, as you mentioned, Jibun highlights that we're interdependent and we are dependent on others, and we've been shaped by others throughout our life. And this idea that we're totally self-reliant or independent's just not true, but we strive for that. Our ego's so attached to that. And I actually wrote about that expression or that word Jibun in my own book, and it was this realization, like our whole life we've been shaped by others and we can't function. We have these roles in society that are dependent on other people. So even if we're a leader or an innovator, we still can't be a leader or innovator without the help of others, without serving others. So this idea that we're part of something and that we have this opportunity to serve the greater good, even if that's in really small ways, I find that so refreshing, as opposed to thinking I've got to be the best version of myself. Which sort of drives me crazy every time I hear that now. So
yeah. I'm reminded by other cultures as well, and I think it's you can see some of the same truths in many different cultures, and that's what I've really appreciated about the opportunity to learn about other different cultures. And there's the word you might have heard, Ubuntu, that
yes.
Archbishop Tutu talked about, and it has this sense of we become human by being together, by coming together. And I made me reflect on the kanji for ningen, right? So the nin is just the person, but the gen part is that sense of coming together. And I feel like it's a similar kind of idea that people become human by coming together, by connecting, and that's our greatest hope for humanity, is that we can come together. And I just did a workshop this weekend, and it was a typical kind of workshop. There were 4 leaders, and I was one of the leaders, and then there were participants. And I said, to me, the border is so blurred between those of us who are considered the leaders and those of us who are considered the followers, and that if we can blur that and really each of us bring forth what we know, then we don't really need these designated leaders like myself. And what I get most out of that gathering, and I think that everybody did, is the sense of togetherness and the sense of community, and the sense that because they were all our leaders, like coming there with a sense of, how am I going to be my best self, and maybe this workshop will help me to be my best self. And I felt like as they were somehow able to lose some of that feeling, and to say, wow, maybe my best self is just going to come out somehow naturally by being able to connect more with other people and being able to somehow be more open to other people, opening my heart to other people. That way I will become a more compassionate leader. I'll become a more empathic leader. I'll be able to listen better to other people. I'll be able to open myself to the possibility of seeing something differently, seeing the world differently, if I'm truly open to the way that this other person sees the world. And so I found there was a gentleness or a softness to that kind of way of being together, you know, coming, each person coming for their own sense of individual growth, but realizing that that growth can often occur simply by being open to and connecting with the others who are there and offer that sense of community.
Well, I'd love to attend one of your workshops, and I did, read about this idea that you have of pushing back the tables, sitting in a circle, and you can demonstrate the transformation of consciousness that often occurs during simple everyday exchanges, and when we treat everyone, I guess, equally and with respect. So this kind of contradicts, leadership or learning. Like, there has to be a central figure we look towards to and follow their advice. And this idea of we're all equal, we can be part of the discussion equally and offer each contribute. And this idea of we see you, we hear you. So would you like to talk a little bit more about how you bring heartfulness into the workplace and also heartful community, I guess, which is an extension of that?
I think it happens quite easily in the sense that it can be facilitated, though, I find, by a leader, and that if the leader can come with that sense of humility and vulnerability. And so I like the image of the tea house, right? The classical tea house, which has a very short and narrow door.
Mm.
And so if you have the image of a samurai, possibly with armor, with swords, and the samurai coming to the door and realizing they can't get in without lowering themselves first to the ground in an act of humility.
Yeah.
And then they cannot go in with any armor, with swords. They have to take all of that off, and they have to slide into the door through this narrow, short door on their hands and knees. And that's an act of vulnerability too. And so I think of that, a leader can offer that to the leader in that sense is the master of the tea, making the tea. But for any tea house, and I think of my classroom as a tea house, or that if you can enter yourself, and then everybody else who enters with that sense of vulnerability and humility and equality. You're all equal in that space, and it's a very simple space, and you don't have to talk. But if you choose to talk, then please talk with a sense of authenticity, and just bring yourself to this space, and don't pretend to know anything other than what you really know, and don't you can also be there in silence. And I've practiced this type of teaching for quite a few years now, and that was something that I learned really from young children too. I used to work in kindergartens and in elementary schools, and I learned a lot from just children, the way children learn something. And I find that at any level of which I have been working with people of any ages, that same approach works. If you can come in to a space with vulnerability and humility and authenticity, then it's disarming to people too. Anybody who comes has their armor on, and they become disarmed, and they don't feel they have to. They don't even want to talk or be in a way that is not harmonious with what is happening in that space. And just yesterday, a participant in the workshop I just did said, I came, to here, and I was so stressed and I was so anxious, and I walked into that room, and I just felt myself releasing that stress and anxiety, and I was able to just feel the beauty of the silence. And I think we were talking. So, but what she meant, I think, was the silence of acceptance, and the silence of that sense of I did an exercise, and at the end is I like you just the way you are, and it's that sense of ari no mama no, dare dare san ga suki desu. I like you just the way you are. And she said that atmosphere just permeated the space, and I felt like, oh, I can just be here. I can just be myself. I don't have to pretend to be anything else, and I don't have to be fearful of anybody else. Nobody else has their weapons, and I don't. I can just be here, and this is something I know because I practiced it a lot, and I practice it over and over again in different kinds of contexts, and so I see it working because people then confirm, oh, that's the way I felt, and this is the way I'm learning in this situation. And so I found that it's very effective. And I've also found that many people really appreciate it. And I found that many people who have other ideas of power do not appreciate it. And so I'm struggling to maintain my. I was just taking my classes have been taken away from me at Stanford many times by certain people that just say, we don't do that at Stanford. We don't bring ourselves into the classroom. We come into the classroom. We are just teachers with knowledge, and we teach that, and we don't try to touch the hearts of people. That's pretty dangerous, what you're doing. And unfortunately, I find that there's a lot of fear, even in the places that supposedly are our great institutions of learning.
Wow.
People very afraid of what might happen if we truly touch the hearts of our students and allow them to truly feel and to truly open themselves.
Yeah.
I think it's frightening because many of our teachers are afraid of that.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh. They're sort of regressing. There seems to be some progress you're making, and they're saying no. That's.
I think we see that in the world, right? You pointed out, if we had this type of leadership, that would be great. But the reality is, we see half of many populations, like the US, deciding instead to live in a world of delusion and to follow leaders who are living in delusion and living in fear and espousing hatred. And I think that's, we can see the danger that many people are find the path towards openness and artfulness to be a very frightening path.
It's extremely unfortunate when vulnerability is sort of equated to weakness, and it's so freeing when you can enter a group being vulnerable and just open. It sort of frees you, and then it usually creates trust, and then sort of these intimate connections with other people. So that's what I've found in my own cohorts. If you share, if you're vulnerable, if you're open, it seems to equate trust very quickly, and then other people can share, and then before you know it, there's this beautiful engagement, and everyone's sharing and learning. And like you, I often learn an incredible amount from my community. Whereas if I was thinking, well, I have to be the leader here, I have to know everything, I'd be seeking control, interrupting people, stopping people, and probably be a crappy learning experience for all involved. So, it's very powerful. And interestingly, that was one of these teachings you learned from your grandmother, these principles you identified of cultivating heartful living. One was vulnerability. So this grandmother of yours sounds like she had a very positive, long-lasting impact on your life.
Yeah.
So would you like to share a few more of these amazing principles that you learned from her?
There's one that's not in the book that I think is I've become more aware of recently, which is that I really wanted and believed that my grandmother would achieve complete enlightenment, satori, right? Because she was living so long and she was such a good person. 111, I thought, well, okay,
Wow.
maybe next year, but she'll become a complete saint and completely enlightened. And she more and more like, everything was arigato, and a beautiful sense of acceptance of life. And then suddenly she would say something like, your grandfather was such a bad person and he never should have done that to me. And she would start talking about how she had wanted to be a doctor, and her father said to her, you should have been my oldest son because you're the one with the ability. I've got all these other kids, I've got these boys, but you're the one who has the ability. You should have been my oldest son, but you were born a girl. You'll never be anything but a housewife. You're going
Oh,
to I'll marry you off. You will not be a doctor. You're not going to go to medical school because you're a girl. And she would bring that up, 100, 109, 110, 111. And my feeling was, oh no, she didn't become a complete saint. She still has some anger. She still
mm,
has some resentment, some these negative human qualities. She's not completely enlightened. And then I started to realize that no, she's a human being.
yeah.
She's a human being, and she's saying that was not right 90 years ago, and it's still not right.
Right.
If a father says that to a girl today, it's still not right. If a society says to a girl today, you cannot do this because you are a girl. If society says that to anybody, you cannot do this because this is the body that you are born into. It's not right. And it wasn't right then. And it's not right today. And it's not wrong for me to feel that injustice is wrong and to have hatred for injustice
Mm,
and I thought something was wrong with my way of, thinking that there's something human about, or she needed to be a human being, which
yeah.
is what she is, and that's part of being a human being. We live in this world, and as close as she could get to complete acceptance of things, there was nothing wrong with her still feeling that enraged about injustice.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that was such an enlightening thing for me, right? To and then because I had a vision of my old age as well. Okay, if I can't be young anymore, then maybe I can be an elder who is a wise elder, and maybe if I just close out my life by meditating more and more, or praying more and more, or going on more retreats, or going, just then maybe I will become enlightened eventually, and then I can die in complete peace. And I realized, I don't have to do that
Mm.
because if grandma couldn't do it,
Mm.
maybe it's just a human thing to not do it, and maybe it isn't until the very end of your life in which you might be able to, when you can actually see through the gate, or so you can see the glimpses through the door, that you can somehow release everything, and
Mm.
that's human. And I did have that experience with her, because those last moments with her, I felt she was drifting in and out of this, sense of seeing through a door, opening the gate and seeing the other side of the gate, and then coming back and telling me it's okay. I'm okay. You're okay. You'll be all right.
Mm.
Subite daijoubu desu.
Wow.
And it gave me that sense of faith or trust in life. And it said, I think that's what is so needed today. People really need to feel some sense of faith and trust. And religions have given that to us, but many people don't follow religions. And so I think we've got to find ways that we can really trust in life, and trust that it's to say yes to life,
Mm.
to feel that it's good to live with zest and with joy and with complete belief in the values, and in that sense of, to go for it and to
Yeah.
really want to live. And there's people who are with people at the end of life say that religion does provide comfort to some people, but that many people who are religious also are fearful at the end of life.
Mm.
And they say what the those who are most peaceful are those who feel trust in life itself, who feel this sense of courage in life and feel like it's good, the value of life and is what is the dignity of life is what's so important. And those are the people that feel the most peaceful at the end of life. And so it's given me a renewed sense that what I hope to do in my work is to simply, through these small communal gatherings, that people will be able to feel able to get outside of their own individual self-concerns, to feel how powerful it is to be connected to others in community, to realize that what all these spiritual people are saying about oneness and connectedness can actually be true. And then to also feel the connection with some kind of mystery, that something beyond this that you might call God, you might call the Great Spirit, you might call nature, you might call the universe, but somehow you feel connected to that. And being connected to that, you let go of some of your fear. And you feel like, oh, I'm connected to that. And now I want to really live. I'm willing to live for something. And that's where it connects to your work, right?
Yeah, well, it's a great
What is
segue to Ikigai, which
Yeah.
we haven't touched on. And I do sometimes end my podcast with, what gives you a sense of Ikigai, what makes your life worth living. And I guess there is this irony to the word that for most Japanese, it's not something they talk about often, or they rarely, or don't even seem to talk about it at all. It's very personal and private. Often it's something quite simple or humble, a pet, a hobby, but it seems to be most fulfilling when it's tied to a social world, family, friends, community. And on a deeper level, there is this connection to, meaning and value of your life, self-actualization, life satisfaction, sense of freedom, all these ideas Miyako Kami explored. And another podcast guest, Gordon Matthews, described it as it's definitely tied to your social world, but it could also be, this transcendence of self into something bigger. And Kami also wrote about, transformational experiences we might experience. The triggers, she wrote that the triggers for transformational experiences are all around us, and that when they happen, it's like this epiphany, this sudden realization that could be interpreted as, God talking to you, or it might happen in nature where you feel one with nature, or, the universe is conspiring to help you. So it is a fascinating concept where for some people it's just a little thing they don't even think about. And then behind it is this huge body of growing research that started, I think, with Kami Miyako in the 1960s. So yeah, Stephen, what about you? When you think of Ikigai, what does it feel like, or what does it mean to you? And what are some examples of your personal Ikigai?
I'm probably in the category of those that you just said don't really think about it. So I don't remember my grandmother ever talking about it, and I think what I like, I'm so drawn to about her life and her teachings is the feeling that she lived Ikigai and didn't really talk about it,
Yeah.
but it was embodied in her way of living. And that's why I wanted to tell stories about her, because I feel like she showed what Ikigai was by what it meant to her by just this is the way she lived. And so I like that way of looking at it. I don't actually talk directly about it, and I think I want to live it as much as possible. And I think I've described that. I find that if I can, just a sense that if I can live the way I feel is a good way to live, and that will by itself give something to other people. And if that's the way in my work, I conduct these workshops, and I have this formal way of teaching courses in which I hope to embody this sense of humility and vulnerability and openness to experience and trust and faith in life. And if I can somehow bring that into that, my connections with other people, both formally, but also on a daily informal basis. So the very small interactions that I can have in my day, and they start with the person that I live with, how I interact with that person, how I show that person don't take a relationship that I've had for 40 years for granted and assume that this person should do things for me, but have appreciation and show gratitude for what this person does for me. And then every person I contact in my daily life who may not, mean that much in the sense that somebody I just passed by on the street, or I pass on the way to work, or somebody working in a shop. If I can somehow engage with those people in the same way, with a sense of I see you, I am here for you, without using the words often, o genki desu ka, kage-sama de. If I can just interact with people, yoroshiku onegai shimasu, that sense of gratitude and a sense of please look with kindness upon my life, and please see me, please remember me, and I will extend the same to you. I find that it's I'm looking for ikigai and in the ordinary, and looking for that in being content with what a day offers me, and the opportunities it offers me to do something. And so the other word my grandmother liked a lot was responsibility, or that sekining garu. And I felt that in the sense that she was saying, you are responsible for your own life. I can help you as much as I can, but you are ultimately responsible to live the best life you can, to do the best with what you've been given. And you've been given a lot, so you have to do a lot. And you've brought children into the world. You have a great responsibility to children, but there are also other children that you, as a teacher, you have responsibility for. And that's something that you need to take, very seriously, about that you're given the responsibility in this life too, to take care of your own life and to take care of the lives of others. And so I find that that's what I strive for in every day, is to feel that as much as life is hard and full of suffering and sorrow, that there's joy in life, and that it makes me want to have summon the courage to go on each day and to live the best I can.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. What a inspiring grandmother. You learned so much from her. And I mean, a very similar word to ikigai is yarigai, which Japanese do use a lot. And this idea of doing things that are worth doing. And that doesn't always imply it's going to be enjoyable. It's just of value to do these things, either to others or for yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Sekinin plays a part. This responsibility we have as, if we're parents, to be, loving, understanding parents, but I guess also give our children the freedom to be themselves and to try and not interfere too much, which isn't well, it's easy for me actually, but it's not always easy for some parents. So
for some.
And this idea to I mean, one thing I learned, I think, from Japan was the power of greetings. And there are so many Kimari Monk set expressions, but to say them well, to say them with care, to greet people properly. Another word that comes to mind is chanto suru, to do things properly or do them well, was a powerful lesson.
Yeah.
And I think in the West, we often dismiss small things as well. They're not important because they're not big enough, or they're not part of the bigger plan, when they actually are important and are part of the bigger plan. So there is a lot to learn from other cultures. And obviously for me, it's been, Japanese culture and the Japanese people who've come into my life. So I've certainly learned so much. So I wish I'd met your grandmother. Yeah, I'm sure I would have learned many more things. But I'm glad I've met you today, Stephen. So thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Where can people find you if they'd like to learn more about your work and what you do?
They can email is one way.
You also have a website, don't you? Yeah.
I have a website, yeah, which is my name without a hyphen .com. Murphy-Shigematsu.com is a website. I think there's an email on there that they can connect with.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes. But yeah, any final thoughts before we finish with? This is probably one of my longest episodes, so it's gone effortlessly and gone quite quickly. But yeah, how would you like to end?
Just to continue and end with the talking about the beautiful Japanese expressions. And there's a recent anime named Suzume no Tojimari, I think it's called, and it just came out this year. But they make a lot of the expression "ittekimasu." And I thought of that because my grandmother had an expression "mo ainai kamoshirenai," and I thought the "ittekimasu," which is much lighter, because you just do it all the time. I think the filmmaker was trying to make the statement about the power of that "ittekimasu" can be similar to that sense of "mo ainai kamoshirenai." So to make a farewell, that common daily farewell, make it something meaningful, and to acknowledge that we are separating now, and there is always the possibility we may never meet again. Hopefully we will, and 99% chance we will. But let's acknowledge that we are separating now, and that I'm going, and I'm leaving you now, but I want to come back, and I intend to come back, and I will. It's when you think of little kids or dogs, right? When you leave the house, seems like the dog thinks you're gone forever, and because when you come back, they act like, "Whoa, I can't believe you're back." But I think I like the wonder of that sense of ittekimasu too, that in acknowledging that you're leaving somebody, and you with appreciation, maybe of gratitude, and that you want to come back, and that you intend to come back, and I hope to see you again. And I thought that's another beautiful way to live, is to think life is full of partings and reconnecting and losses, though, and sometimes we don't see somebody else again, but to somehow honor that on a daily basis with these little rituals. And like you said, Japanese culture is full of beautiful rituals that if we can do them with some more meaning, itadakimasu is a beautiful way of receiving, and acknowledging with gratitude what you're receiving. That to live with that more mindful, heartful way of living is something that is daily, but also moment by moment, right? To think of all the moments in life, the opportunities in life, and that's to be grateful that even though we keep making mistakes over and over again, we keep having more opportunities, and that's what the beauty of staying alive gives us. So thank you for this opportunity, and look forward to more in the future.
Likewise, thank you for the wisdom and for your time today, Stephen. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think I might have to make it a two-part episode. So,
Okay.
So thank you so much for your time, and let's do this again, hopefully in person.
That would be great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ikigai Podcast. To learn more about Ikigai or to become a certified Ikigai Tribe coach, visit ikigaitribe.com.